My family farms up here in Ottawa County, so north and south of Afton. So I'm the 5th generation that farms some of the same land that my great-grandpa started farming back in the 1940s, early 50s. I was living in DC and working on the Hill with a plan to go to grad school overseas, and then COVID hit, and so those plans fell apart, and so I found myself back here, living back at home with mom and dad. And after kind of the honeymoon phase wore off in the first couple months of being back, I realized, okay, well, I had this, several years planned out. I knew what my future was going to be, or at least I thought I did. And all of a sudden, it's taken a complete 180. And so when that finally set in, I felt really alone, and those kind of creeping feelings, it kind of culminated in a pretty severe depressive episode that ended up with me. I wasn't able to work for some time and could barely get out of bed. And whenever I realized that these feelings of depression weren't going to just go away on their own, I thought, well, when people get depressed, what do? They go talk to a therapist. So I looked into that, and I realized that the closest licensed clinical psychologists were in Joplin, Missouri, or Tulsa, which was over an hour each way. So I'd opened up to my family, which was, really hard, but the most important, because obviously being back here on the family farm, my dad is my boss. So having to, go to him and say, I'm really struggling, and this is something I'm dealing with, especially kind of the reputation of farmers. There's some truth to that, of, kind of stiff upper lip, and, we don't really acknowledge those feelings inside. We just kind of push them out and do the work. And I think having to be vulnerable was hard, to kind of have that conversation with him, with my mom, and with my grandparents. So really, from that, and then starting to open up to some friends too, and finding friends both in the agriculture industry and outside that had dealt with some of the same issues, offered me some tips. From looking on the internet, the first thing I did is when I could just barely get out of bed and go, I got a notebook and started a gratitude journal. So I ended up calling it, but I just wrote 3 things that I'm thankful for, and actually still have this page in my office at my house. And I wrote number 1, mom and dad. Number 2, Austin, so that's my twin brother. And number 3, friends. So just things that I was like, okay, these are the good things in my life. If anybody that's dealt with depression knows, when you're in the middle of that, it feels like there's really no good things in your life, despite knowing that you're lucky in a lot of ways, and that have a lot of fortune to have a lot of things that I did. It's just hard to see that when you're in the middle of that. So I would tell anybody, especially those in farmers and ranchers, those in the ag industry that are dealing with anxiety, experiencing depression, feeling themselves drifting into a dark place, just don't do it alone. When you deal with it alone by yourself for so long, just those thoughts that, this is never gonna get it better, I can't handle this, aren't gonna go away by themselves. So the encouragement I would give people is just talk to somebody, go to them and say, hey, I'm struggling right now with this. I don't know what the answer is. They're not gonna know what the answer is. That's when I first started talking to people, that was an issue with when I started explaining to my parents what was going on. They're like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? What can we do to fix it? This is being caused by something, so if you know what it's being caused by, then how can we fix it? But a lot of times with anxiety and depression, you don't really know what the exact cause. There's a lot of factors, but it's not, obviously if it was one thing you could pinpoint, flip a switch and change, then there would be no mental health issues. So just my encouragement is just talk to somebody, and if you don't have anyone to talk to, call me.